TLDR podcast, episode 2. We're an official podcast now. We have our shit online. We have a social media account. We have a sponsor. Like it's pretty much as legit as you can get. So for all of you who decided to stick around and actually listen to a second episode, thank you. Welcome. We have a great episode for you today. Today, in this order, Alex will be talking about the NBA restart and all the things that are going to be going on with the National Basketball Association. Eric is going to give us his WestWorld summary through his brain and his own whatever the hell's going on upstairs.
Terrifying.
So I'm looking forward to that one. Tradon is going to give us his 2020 NHL draft lottery and all the chaos and drama that happened last week with that. I'm going to give you guys the MLB 2020 season outlook and what that's going to be like, all the new rule changes and all the difference of a 2020 shortened 60-game season and how that's going to look. And then James is going to finish us off with some NFL offseason moves, the defense edition. So basically, last week just with the offense.
With the defense.
Here we are, guys. Here are our boys. Tradon joining us live from Covina, California. Tradon, how we doing?
Bad, man. Just keep it on. Excited to see that there's some news to talk about, especially when it comes to the NHL, the NBA, now the MLB. It's something that gets you up in the morning, gets you going for sure.
Oh yeah, James joining us from Orange. James, what's up, man?
What's up, guys? How you guys doing? Excited for this round 2.
Oh yeah, bro. Eric joining us from Seal Beach. Eric.
Hello, Tyler. I want to get right into it. So we all golfed last Saturday in Chino Hills, El Prado course. I like the course, actually. It is a very long course, and we did walk 18 holes. It's probably the most tired I've ever seen James in his life.
That was awful.
This guy runs like 6 miles, but he got tired carrying a golf bag for 18 holes.
9.3 miles, dude.
Yeah, we did walk 9 miles, but what we came to conclusion was that golf and sex are actually kind of similar. If you think about it, it's kind of what Tyler was chiming in on all day. But when you hit a golf ball, you want to hit it in the G spot. So you want to hit it just in the right spot where the club head hits the ball right in the middle. You don't have to swing out of your shoes. And so coming from that, basically, it's like you want to be soft and slow, and that comes with the clitoris rubbing. And so when you rub the clitoris, you want to be nice and gentle and slow, but you don't want to jerk the dick all hard and swing out of your shoes. And that's when it comes to swinging to the G spot. But it's all positional based as well. If you think about it, you got to set up in the right position and you got to be in the right spot to hit that ball in the G spot. And also when you first hit that ball, you don't want to blow your load on the first hole. So you have 18 holes. You're going to walk 9 miles possibly. So
that's true. I mean, the whole time, basically it's you, your stick, the ball, and the hole. And when all those things can work together, that's when you have a good golf game. So yes, it is very much like sex in that sense. You have to not just think about yourself and not just go ham and swing out of your ass, because that's not going to complement the rest of the hole. You have to think about everything else that's going on, and it all has to work together. You have to work with your partner, that being either the ball, the hole, whatever it is. It's a complementary back and forth that is very similar. Sex, yes. I think
we're really taking sex advice from the guy who couldn't talk to a girl up until 2 years ago.
That's
a really solid point.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, like Tyler said, it took him DeChambeau, it took him, 2 to 3 minutes to line up for a putt. And that's how long it took Tyler to go approach a girl when he was staring right at her at a bar in Chico. So, like you said, James, you're right. You gotta take that in consideration.
Grain of salt, man. Grain of salt. But you're probably right.
My goodness. I'm glad I do not live near you guys.
Yeah.
I think that's a good call. I think the family-friendly portion of the podcast, that's just out. That's out the window.
Yeah, so if you have any family and friends listening to episode 2, just tell them to fast forward about 10 minutes.
Yeah, skip the first 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Don't do an introduction on this one. All right. Well, when we come back, Alex is going to give us our NBA restart. Basketball's back, y'all. And we're going to have a fun time looking into that. So stick around. Alex, when we come back. All right. Welcome back, everyone. The National Basketball Association is back. And Alex is going to give us our recap on everything you need to know about what's happened and what's going on, when it's starting, who's in it. Alex, take it away.
Yeah, so since I did like a not so serious one last week, I figured maybe do a little more serious this week. So yeah, that's right, Tyler. The NBA is coming back July 30th. They are playing down there in Orlando. They're doing the Hub, which is different than what baseball is proposing right now and kind of what hockey's doing. Hockey's still kind of trying to figure their stuff out. But not all the teams are going on. So in the East, there's only 9 teams. So the 8 teams that were already in the 8 spots, and then the Washington Wizards were 5.5 back, and they're only playing 8 regular season games. And then wherever the standings lie after that, they're going into their normal playoff scenarios like they would, 1 plays 8, 2 plays 7 and on. In the West, on the other hand, though, there are an extra 5 teams that are playing because the Suns are 6 games out of that 8 spot. I'm not really sure why the Suns were included. I don't know how they're going to make up six games in 8. I mean, they pretty much have to win out, and everyone has to lose in front of them. But I do think it's kind of interesting. So a couple of notes to point out. Both the Bucks and the Lakers, who are the 1 seeds in their respective divisions or conferences, are each up by more than 5.5 games. So that 1 seeds are probably locked in. And we'll get into kind of like a finals possible matchup between those two in a little bit. But in the East, just saw it today, the Nets. So the Nets are in the 7 spot. KD's not, well, he's still hurt. He was never going to play. Kyrie's not playing. DeAndre Jordan has COVID. Spencer Dinwiddie has COVID. So there's a good chance the Nets just lose all the way out and somehow the Wizards sneak in, they are 16 games under 500. And they might sneak into the playoffs because the East.
That's the East for you, man. That's the East.
Yeah, so I don't know. What do you guys think? So pretty much the 1 through 6 seeds, so the Bucks, the Raptors, the Celtics, the Heat, the Pacers, and the Sixers are all in already pretty much. They can't fall out. But do you think the Nets or the Magic, who are currently in the 8 spot, fall and somehow the Wizards, who were terrible all year, they're like one of the worst defensive teams, squeak in?
I think there's a chance. Like the Nets, like you said, they have nobody right now. I mean, on top of everybody that you mentioned, you also have Wilson Chandler sitting out for the rest of this. So they have nobody.
Yeah,
like, seriously, nobody.
Almost nobody.
But on the flip side, the Washington Wizards, they have David Bertans also sitting out. He's a guy who's going to free agency, averaged 15 points per game and shot 42% from 3. So that's a big piece right there. But you still got Bradley Beal, man. Like, he's going to just carry that. He'll win a couple games just on his own, especially if the Nets fall. I think there's a good chance that the Washington Wizards take that 8 spot.
Yeah, but the Wizards, they also don't have John Wall. I don't think.
They haven't had him all season.
No, he's not going to play.
He won't. Yeah. So I think maybe even the Magic squeeze in a spot. Last year, they were the team that squeezed into a spot for that last 8 seed. And it doesn't mean shit, but they won 1 game versus the Raptors, who ended up winning the championship. But, maybe that's a little morale booster. But I think, like what James is saying, the Nets have nobody, so that kind of gives the Magic a little more of a chance to squeeze in. From what
Magic is the 8 seed right now anyway, so they're going to make it. So, like,
yeah.
Looks like the Magic,
like the Nets
could become the 7, and then the Wizards could sneak in the 8, and the Nets fall out.
Yeah, I don't think the Wizards have enough firepower to get through, especially with James pointing out that Bertans isn't in there. That's a guy that gives him solid points. So he's also a hot hit on the court. Speaking back to that first episode, the rats in the NHL, he's kind of a rat in the NBA. He's probably a good dude off the court, but I mean, he's the type of guy you want when on your team, but off your team, he could be a little ratty. But I think the Magic hold that 8th spot.
Okay, so switching over to the West, a lot more going on here. There's definitely some kind of conspiracies about the Pelicans, who are technically in the 10 spot right now, but they are tied with the Kings and the Trailblazers. And they're 3.5 back of the Grizzlies, who are in that 8 spot. So looking at the proposed 8-game schedules these teams have, the Pelicans have one of the easiest schedules coming in. And there's this whole conspiracy theory online that if the Pelicans can sneak in and become that 8 seed, then it's LeBron and Zion in the first round. I mean, if you're the NBA, you kind of want that to happen. Like, that's big money. A bunch of people are going to watch that. Zion's probably the most hyped rookie coming into the league since LeBron was in 2003. I'm not really going to give the Kings, the Spurs, the Suns any other love. I don't really think they legitimately have a chance. I personally love Dame Lillard, so I kind of want the Trailblazers to sneak in because I think Dame's legit. But Ty, as a Lakers fan, out of those, so the Grizzlies, the Blazers, or the Pelicans, who would you least want the Lakers to play in that first round? Like, who are you most worried about if they do match up with any of those teams?
I think history tells us that the Trailblazers and the Lakers, the Trailblazers just have the Lakers number for whatever reason. There's no real explanation for it. I mean, even on the night, obviously, like, emotions were high and there's a lot of things going on. But the night after the first game back after Kobe died, they played the Trailblazers and they lost. And if you look at, I don't know what the numbers are, but I guarantee you in the last 10 years, the Trailblazers have a winning record against the Lakers, no doubt. So the Trailblazers, for whatever reason, I don't know why, but they have the Lakers number. So for me, the team I would least want to face the Trailblazers. Damian Lillard is a baller. He is an amazing player, and he can step it up. And he is one. I think he's the top 5 player in the NBA. I will stick to that. But for me as a fan, I would love to see Lakers Pelicans, just because, I mean, with the trade with Anthony Davis, a lot of former Lakers went Pelicans. Obviously Anthony Davis with the Lakers. So kind of seeing that whole matchup, seeing guys like Lonzo Ball trying to come back and, have some revenge against their former team. Anthony Davis the same. Zion Williams, of course, is a big part of that. Zion versus LeBron. That's the matchup I want to see. But yeah, to answer your question, I do not want to see the Lakers play the Trailblazers. That team just makes me nervous, just because of the history that the Lakers have had with that team. And the team I most want to see is Lakers Pelicans.
Yeah,
a couple of things to add here.
Yeah, go for it, James.
You said you're scared of the Trailblazers, and no doubt Dame is a damn good player. CJ McCollum can shoot the hell out of the ball.
McCollum is another dude for sure.
Yeah, he can shoot the 3 like crazy. But you guys are missing Trevor Ariza. He's sitting out this entire thing. He's not playing at all. That's 11 points and 5 rebounds just gone. They added somebody from the G League. His name is Jalen Adams. He's a point guard, though. So you're replacing a small forward with a point guard. Doesn't add up to me. So that's the thing they're going to falter right there. Trevor Ariza is a big part of that team. He was a big part of the Lakers team when you pushed the Lakers. It's hard to replace that. And then for the Pelicans, that'd be cool to see too. But they just had 3 players test positive for COVID. They won't name which 3, but you got 3 of them who are down right now. And the chance that they get back, who knows? That's up in the air.
But do you think, I know just throughout the season, the Lakers obviously had the Pelicans number. I don't think the Pelicans beat them once, but maybe the first game they played them, it was a blowout. And then the next 3, they were kind of close. And then in the end, you could tell the young talent can finish it for the Pelicans. And I don't think the Pelicans would beat the Lakers, especially in the playoffs, but I think they could potentially tire them out a little bit. I think just after playing a team 4 times, you start to learn their methods, learn their skills, learn the ways that they do things. And I think it's tough, though. Like Tyler said, the Trailblazers, you don't want to see them either. But yeah, the Pelicans, they could get through them, but I think the Pelicans could give them a little bit more difficulty than the Lakers fans think what's going to come if they do face the Pelicans, especially with Zion. It's his first time in the playoffs. You got to think he's going to go off, but at the same time, he can go off and the team can't win. That's kind of been what's going on throughout the season, but it's his first season. Anyways, it's still going to be a tough battle for the Lakers, and I know the Lakers will get past them, but I think it's just going to be not as easy as they thought. They'd probably want to see Memphis of all those teams. Even though Memphis has Ja Morant, I don't think Memphis could tire them out as much maybe as the Pelicans would. You have those guys that James is talking about that all got traded from the Lakers to the Pelicans. They're going to have a little vengeance on their side, They may have something to go at them with.
Yeah, I definitely think the Pelicans have something to prove. I think definitely Ingram, Josh Hart, Lonzo Ball want to show the Lakers, like, you gave up on us. I mean, granted, none of those guys are Anthony Davis, who's probably another top 5 player in the league.
True.
So, yeah, I kind of agree. I think I'm not worried about the Grizzlies all that much. The Pelicans, I think, could put up a fight. But being a Lakers fan and seeing Dame in the playoffs and knowing I think we've won like maybe 2 games in Portland over the last 10 years. I think we didn't have back-to-back wins in Portland since the Kobe Powell years of like 2009, 2010. So the Trailblazers worry me the most. But kind of moving forward, so let's just assume, I think from the East, I'm just going to assume the Bucks are going to push through. They seem to just have been destroying almost everybody all season. I think the NBA also wants an LA Lakers Clippers Western Conference final. And it kind of feels like whoever wins that series might just be like riding such a high from that series. If they run into the Bucks, it might be over. Or on the opposite, do you think I personally believe and kind of hope that if that series happens, it goes 7. And either the Lakers or the Clippers are just so exhausted that when they meet the Bucks in the finals, are the Bucks just going to wipe them off the floor because they're going to be rested?
I mean, so you got to think the East. I think the Raptors are still going to be a tough team to get by. I know the Sixers are going to be there too. It's going to be one of those 2 teams probably. I think. Actually, fuck the Celtics. It's another team that's tough. It's hard to say, but like you can even say the Bucks may play the Celtics, and that could go 7. The Celtics, but even the Raptors, like they're still a tough team. Like they still have the playoff experience. They have most of the same dudes from last year. I don't know how easy it is going to be for the Bucks. I think the Bucks can get there, but I think similar to what you're saying, the Battle of LA for the West, I think the Bucks are going to have to battle their way through to get to the finals. I don't know if it's going to be a quick rest for them. Hopefully not. So they're, the finals is going to be a hopefully a Game 7 series, or a battle in itself. But it's a toss-up. I mean, the Celtics, though, too, you can't count them out. They've been showing their worth this year.
Yeah, I think the East is competitive, but I think whoever comes out of the West is going to be the favorite to win it. I think from the beginning of this season, the opening day was Lakers Clippers. I really hope that that's how it's going to end up in the Western Conference Final. I think that's what the fans want. That's what I want. I think it's what a lot of people want. It's the Battle of Los Angeles. I think whoever comes out of that series is going to be a favorite to win it, and I think will win it. So it's going to come down to that Western Conference Final, and that's assuming that the Lakers and Clippers both make it. But I think those are the 2 best teams in the NBA. Whoever comes out of that series is probably going to win the NBA championship this season.
I disagree with you, man. Like, if the Bucks make it all the way through, they match up better than anybody to those Western teams. Giannis, dude, that guy's athletic. He can guard anybody.
He's unguardable himself, too.
Exactly. And then Bledsoe, dude, he can shoot too. Can Rondo guard him? I don't know. Brook Lopez, he's big, man. He's going to be in the middle. Like, the Bucks are going to be a menace.
Yeah, finally the NBA is going to be a toss-up. I'd say the last, 5 years, you kind of could predict who was going to win the NBA. it's finally like the NHL. That's one of the best things about the NHL, right, Tradon, is that you never know who the fuck's gonna win that Stanley Cup. There could be an AC that gets in that all of a sudden goes on a run.
Yeah.
I mean, it's different in basketball, but now you could finally say, like, kind of what James is pointing out, like, you can't count out probably 4 of those teams in the East, like, and you can't count out the Lakers or the Clippers, whoever makes it, or even the Nuggets. I mean, the Nuggets is just a wild card team, but they've been a good team for the past year or two, and you know, if they go on a run, you don't want to be in their way. So it's finally, you don't really know what's going to fucking happen in that league. It's good to hear that.
Yeah, there's pretty much 3 teams from the West that can win, and for the Lakers or the Clippers or whomever has to face the Nuggets, they'll be playing in Orlando, so the whole Denver part doesn't really matter anymore. But that Nuggets team is dirty, and I think they could surprise some people for sure. Another cool thing, Tyler, you were mentioning how Lakers-Clippers started the season. It's going to be Lakers-Clippers on July 30th as the first game of their kind of 8 remaining regular season games. So I'll be watching that. It'll definitely be interesting to see what happens with the basketball and playoffs. I am a little worried, since Florida is a pretty gnarly hot spot right now, that it could all fall apart next week. We'll kind of just have to wait and see. But that's all we got for NBA, unless anyone else has something you want to add. If not, apparently we're talking about WestWorld after this.
All right. Thanks, Alex, and everyone. That'll end this segment on the NBA Restart. When we come back, we're going to take a journey through Eric's brain and what was going through his mind when he was watching the HBO hit series WestWorld when we came back here on TLDR podcast. All right, guys, welcome back to TLDR podcast. This segment, our boy Eric is going to take us through his version of HBO series WestWorld. Eric, take it away.
Right. So, first off, everyone I've ever talked to that's watched the show is pretty much on the same boat as me, and that nobody understands WestWorld. It's a good show, don't get me wrong, but I'm going to take you through a little summary synopsis of what I remember, because I tried to pull up a summary online, and it was like 4 pages long of things that I do remember, things that I don't remember, things that I never even knew existed in the show. But here we go. So it starts out obviously in the Western world, and you meet this girl, Dolores, this hot blonde chick, and she's going through her everyday life. She wakes up. There's some music playing that wakes her up every day. She wakes up, walks out of her house, sees her dad, and talks to him, says the same thing she does every morning, grabs her painting materials and a picture, and gets on a horse and rides to the WestWorld. She meets some people along the way, right? And later that night, fast forward, there's this bounty hunter guy, and he's in a cowboy hat because he's in WestWorld. And this guy murders her. I mean, he takes her into this barn house and everything, and kills her boyfriend and the guy that she likes, all this stuff, murders her. Fast forward, she wakes up in a lab, all these scientists are around her, right? She's being fixed. So she's in a dream, apparently. And these people fix her, and then all of a sudden she wakes up again in the same exact scenario. So she's going through the same scenario. She wakes up, the music plays, she grabs her painting, talks to her dad, gets on the horse. In a nutshell, you see all these other characters in the show do the same thing. The characters that you meet in the show, they wake up in the same world every day, and they go through the same scenario. But you see that, like, these characters get killed. They live the same life, but there's other people coming in. The other people coming in are humans, and these characters are robots. So this is when you realize, well, this is when I realized that WestWorld is like a theme park. So humans go in there for their own pleasures. They could do whatever they want. They can go on like hunting missions. They can have pleasures with the robots. But the thing is that's crazy is the robots, they just look like humans. And through the first season, you can tell, the more you watch, you can see like when a character is really a robot, and the humans can do whatever they want to the robots. The robots can't really do anything to the humans. They can't kill them. They could put them in like a stressful situation, but basically these robots have codes, right, Tyler? Am I getting it right here so far? So these robots have codes.
So far, keep going.
So basically the guy who created this world puts these like algorithms and codes into these robots, and they live like the same story every day. At the very end of the first season, I remember when I was watching this show, like it came out in like 2015, but when I first watched it, my friend Alberto Huerta, Berto, we call him, fucking ruined it for me. And he said, oh, did you see that the black dude is Arnold and he's a robot? And that's like another main character that I didn't mention. So I just kind of spoiled the first season for anyone who hasn't seen it.
Yeah, we really should have said spoilers alert first.
But there's this dude throughout the whole show that is working in the lab, and he's configuring all the robots and putting the codes into them and all the algorithms and everything, and he's fixing them. But you find out that he is a robot, and you think he's a human the whole time. But also, in the first season, all the robots keep talking about this dude named Arnold. You never meet this dude named Arnold throughout all 3 seasons. But he's supposed to be a guy that once created the park, that this black dude, Bernard, is supposed to be. But he's a robot. But you think he's a human. See, all right, so that's season 1.
What?
Tyler,
I'm so confused.
You know.
Oh yeah, I left this out. At the very end of the first season, they just pretty much kill everyone, and they start killing humans, which never happens because they can't really harm humans. But all of a sudden, they could harm humans because she changed the code. So now she's not like a pretty farmer girl anymore. She's still a pretty girl, but she's now a badass, and she's ready to take the whole fucking WestWorld over. See Dolores now, she's a badass. She was once like a pretty little farmer girl. Now all of a sudden she's killing everybody. You see this girl Maeve, who's the other character that changed her code. She's killing everyone off. So now they're 2 badass robots that are killing off all the humans, which was never supposed to happen. All of a sudden they come to conclusion. I think they have, I don't even know, like foreshadows, or they see the future. I don't even know what the fuck it is, but they see that there's another world. And if they get to this world, they could free the robots and say, like, this is your own world. You don't get controlled by humans anymore. They're trying to tell the robots in the story. Anytime they go and tell them about, like, a memory that they remember, the robots, like, spaz out, and that's when they malfunction. But they find out that there's this other world they can get them into.
Eastworld.
But they find... Season 3 is the worst season of the 3 seasons. Tyler would disagree, but the first 2 seasons you're in WestWorld, you're in this western area. All of a sudden it fast forwards and you're in the future, and the first character you see in the 3rd season is fucking Jesse Pinkman, who's a good actor, and he was great in Breaking Bad. But he's the first dude you see, and you've never seen him in the show before. And he's the first dude you see, from what I remember, in the first episode. He's like a thug weirdo dude. He steals a bunch of shit, and fucking, I think he kills a bunch of people. But he also runs the show with Marshawn Lynch, which is pretty cool. When I first saw that, I was like, that's fucking Marshawn Lynch. That's pretty legit that he's in the show. Pinkman becomes the prodigy child to take down this giant robot center. But my mind gets a little hazy in the very end. That girl, Maeve, who was also a badass, fights Dolores, who they were once like good friends, fights her, then joins her. And then they take down the dude who bought WestWorld. And Tyler, I need your clarification. I think they destroy the robot center. This is when I was like, the show they should have just had 2 seasons. I don't think they should have had a 3rd season.
No.
Tyler, take it away.
Holy shit. Okay. So that's not really how the season ended.
Oh my god.
The man.
I need clarification of how it ended.
Goes to one of the factories that produces these robots, and he's the one that gets murdered by the robots. So the factory is still very much functional. So I don't know what the fuck you were watching, but
I thought
this-
Pinkman destroyed it.
Is this whole
Dude,
thing
how
like
high
lead
were
up to
you?
the Terminator? Like, where's Sarah Connor and all this? Where's Skynet?
Westworld, it's this really cool science fiction HBO show. It's really, really good. It is really complicated, confusing, but it's really about artificial intelligence and consciousness and kind of the link between the two and what that really means. And
Yeah, that's what I meant. That's what I meant.
it gets really in depth and crazy, but I love it. I think it's a really, really good show.
Sounds like a drawn out Black Mirror episode.
Yeah, it's pretty much
Kinda, yeah.
it's pretty much that. So it's really fascinating. It really speaks to, I think, a place that I think society is very close to getting to in terms of being able to create an artificial intelligence that is conscious and has, you know, sentience and all that stuff. Like, we're realistically at the rate we're going, we're really not that far away from something like that. And so I think this show kind of basically puts like a worst case scenario into a, you know, cool show of what that could look like for the future. And really, I think season 3 puts that kind of scenario in how an artificial intelligence with consciousness puts in, you know, into the real world and with humans, and a worst case scenario, how that would play out. And that's kind of what season 3 is about. But yeah, that's all we have to say about it. If you're really into a science fiction show, especially if you're interested in artificial intelligence, consciousness, all that kind of stuff, I recommend it. I would also say every time I've watched an episode of Westworld, I've gone to YouTube and watched a recap of it because I am confused, and there's a lot of just really complicated plots and complicated ideas that run through the show. But yeah, I still think it's a really great show.
It's still a good show, and I don't think I really spoiled it for anybody because that's just it's the facts from my brain, so they're all over the place. It's
Facts is an interesting word to use.
I love it.
yeah, like the scenarios I described, like maybe were in order in my brain, but they're probably not in order, you know. But it's still a good show. I don't really think I spoiled it much, maybe just besides what I said about the first season, but
Except
nonetheless, it's a good show. It's just very confusing and nobody understands it, and that's what I conclude my rant with.
all right. Thanks, Eric. That was awesome. All right. When we come back, Tradon is gonna give us his rundown on the 2020 NHL draft lottery that took place last week, and all the crazy drama that unfolded. You're gonna want to stick around for this one. We'll be right back. All right, guys, welcome back to TLDR Podcast. This segment, Tradon is going to talk about the NHL draft lottery and all the drama that unfolded. This was not your average lottery, people. Tradon, tell us what the fuck happened.
All right.
I'm already.
Yeah. I'm gonna start by saying this. I think that June 26th is gonna go down. June 26th, 2020 is gonna go down as one of the NHL's biggest drama-filled days when it ever comes to the draft lottery. So to give some perspective to those who maybe aren't familiar with hockey or draft lotteries in general, up until 1994, the NHL always just gave the first pick to the worst team in the league. But that kind of led to a tanking system where people would just, you know, teams would just start tanking for the top player. It wasn't until 95 that they instilled the draft lottery, where the worst team had the highest odds of getting the top pick, and then it tiered down from there. Well, fast forward to 2020, and I'm going to call this the 2020 COVID Alexis Lafreniere lottery bullshit debacle. That's what it's going to be called from my perspective. So, as part of the NHL's return to play, I guess structure, 24 teams were granted the ability to play the rest of the season, or essentially a playoff round, or continue playing, so to speak, which is different than the typical, 16 teams that go into playoffs. The reason they did that was because they only played 83% of the season. there were some teams that had a mathematical chance of making the playoffs, and the NHL wanted to grant them the ability to get back into the playoffs. So they, based on your percentage of points relative to your games, they seeded the teams in the top 8. I'm sorry, the top 12 from each conference were granted the ability to play. 8 on each side, 8 from each conference of the lower tiered teams are playing each other in a best of 5 to determine who's going to be those final 4 spots of each conference in the playoffs. Well, as an ability, as a way to make sure that the draft lottery was fair for those teams that weren't going to win that round, as would be the case if the season had finished out, the NHL decided to impose a 2-phase draft lottery, which is unprecedented. It's never happened before. Essentially, how it works is they gave the percentage of odds for the bottom 7 teams that aren't going to get the chance to play another game of hockey here in 2020 for the 2020 season, and gave a placeholder Team A through Team H, which represents the 8 teams that will eventually lose the play-in round of the new return to play. And the way it works is they did the draft lottery on Friday, and the rule was if in phase 1, if one of the top 3 picks went to Team A through H, that would trigger a second phase of the draft lottery, making it so that all 8 of the teams that lose in the eventual play-in round will have an equal opportunity to get whatever pick that was, whether it be 1, 2, or 3. Well, so we'll fast forward to Friday night, and again, the debacle that is the NHL. It just so happened that the first round pick is going to one of the 8 teams that will eventually have a chance to make the playoffs, but will eventually lose the play-in round. Making it going based off that, it knocked the worst team, Detroit Red Wings, all the way to place 4 in the draft. They had a terrible season, and they weren't given any help whatsoever. The Kings actually jumped to 2, and the Ottawa Senators, via the San Jose Sharks first round pick, is the 3rd overall pick. Now, before I get into scenarios, I first want to ask you, Alex, just based on my summary, what kind of problems do you see going on with this going forward?
Well, I mean, kind of what we were talking about off air at the night it was happening, where you as an Oilers fan, obviously, as you can see over your right shoulder, and how you kind of lucked into McDavid, sort of, you can kind of luck in. The Oilers can. I mean, obviously, as an Oilers fan, they're having a good season. They have a good chance of moving on. But if they don't, you can magically luck in to the number 1 pick, which would be, for any of these teams who are obviously good enough, or almost, the Blackhawks, some of these teams that squeaked in with these new weird COVID rules, they're going to end up getting a very big top prospect that in normal times they never, ever would have had a chance for. On the other side, as a Kings fan, kind of a bummer, because we did have a shot at the number 1 pick, but, a number 2 pick is still pretty good. Our last number 2 pick turned out pretty darn well, Drew Doughty. With the kind of mock drafts that are going on, it seems like Quentin Byfield will be possibly the number 2 overall pick, a big lefty shot center, who, again, when we pick big centers that shoot lefty, they kind of turn out pretty well, like that Kopitar dude. For the Red Wings, you've got to just be like, you fucking kidding me. They were on a historically bad pace. I was reading at one point they were going to have a net goal rating, the worst in history, and then they end up as the 4 pick. There's definitely problems with it, and there's going to be, I mean, these teams, picks 2 through 7 or whatever, however many where they were, that didn't get a chance to make these playoffs and now lost out on the number 1 pick. There's going to be a lot of issues, I think, with then respect from the teams to the league. I think the relationship generally is pretty decent in hockey. I mean, they had the lockout, a while back, but CBAs constantly, have to be reworked. And this, I mean, it's crazy times, but that could be leading to a bigger issue. We can't predict 3, 4, 5 years down the road.
I think that, I mean, I definitely think that's a good point. And I'm going to bring in some stats here. I mean, or some, I guess, trivia. This will be the first time in NHL history that one of the top 7 worst teams aren't going to have the first overall pick. This is the first time that's ever happened. And what's even crazier is, like you said, a team like the Pittsburgh Penguins or the Edmonton Oilers, who are the best of the play-in round teams, have the opportunity to lose and then turn around and get Alexis Lafreniere, who's considered who will be the first overall pick, and a damn good pick at that. Definitely franchise changing. When you look at it from this perspective, I was already pretty pissed off at the overall structure from one perspective. When I look at the Edmonton Oilers, who, maybe I'm biased, but I can even say the Pittsburgh Penguins. Both teams had a 98% chance of making the playoffs. There would have had to been a lot of things to go wrong that they wouldn't have made the playoffs. We have to turn around and play the Chicago Blackhawks, who had a 3% chance of making the playoffs. Everything would have had to go right.
You guys
and I agree. And now we're stuck in a situation where it's a best of 5. And as you guys know, in hockey, once you are placed into a best of 5 or a best of 7 situation, it's no longer a 3% or 97% chance of winning. It's all of a sudden maybe a 60% chance if you're favored, but even then it's pretty high, or it's pretty, low relative to what, we have now dropped our percent chance of getting into the playoffs. Chicago gets boosted. Not only that, if Chicago loses, they have a 1 in 8 chance of getting first overall pick. So, these are the kind of things that kind of run through my mind. And Tyler, I mean, give me your perspective. I mean, as a Kings fan, you got to be kind of annoyed, but is this a debacle? Is this a problem that the NHL is going to face or going to have to deal with going forward?
Yeah, it's a very interesting way to do drafts. I think so. The NBA and NHL, the ones that did the draft lottery, means that the bottom are in a lottery. Obviously, the worst record has the highest percent chance to get the number 1 pick. There's no guarantee. Football, baseball, if you have the worst record, you're guaranteed, unless you get a trade or something weird, you have the number 1 overall pick. And I think in a way that's actually kind of good for the sport of hockey and basketball, in the sense that it kind of prevents tanking
right.
teams, and a lot of teams do that in baseball, especially baseball. It's been a big problem with baseball the last few years. Football, I'm not sure so much, but where teams will try to lose on purpose in order to try and get the number 1 pick, and no fans, and it's not good for the sport if teams are trying to lose on purpose, right? And they're trying to be bad. Versus in basketball and hockey, just because you're the worst team in the league doesn't guarantee you're going to get the best pick. You could get number 1, you could get number 5, and 1 through 5 could be it's a huge difference in what play you're getting. Obviously, a first round pick is a first round pick, but in some years like this year, that number 1 pick is a big time prospect that could be a franchise changer for you.
Right.
So I guess on the flip side of it, the fact that a playoff team is potentially getting this number 1 overall pick is a very, very interesting circumstance. And I've just been kind of confused with this whole rule and the whole thing. And Tradon, you've explained it pretty well to me, and how that's all worked and how that's kind of why this has happened. Which is a crazy coincidence. It wasn't like a predetermined thing. I was watching live, and it was like this big breaking news, and the guy that was announcing the picks, made it like breaking news, like some guy came into the courtroom right before a verdict with like breaking evidence to overturn a verdict or whatever. It was crazy. It was very interesting, very dramatic. Definitely makes for some good discussion, and I mean, it's going to be very interesting. Whoever gets the number 1 overall pick, Tradon, like you mentioned, it's going to be debated for years to come, because it's kind of like really probably not the team that deserved to get that guy, that player, but
right.
As a fan personally, I'm pretty okay with being in the number 2, considering that we were in the number 4 slot to start. For me, going up 2 notches, I'm good with that. Obviously you get a chance to get number 1 without this whole of the rule, but there's no guarantee. So I'm, as a Kings fan, honestly, like I'm not super upset. I'm pretty content with number 2 pick. But yeah, it's a very interesting scenario for the NHL.
Yeah. I look at it from this perspective. A lot of the teams that have the opportunity now to even play in the playoffs were already given a lottery, in my perspective. They were already given a chance to make the playoffs in an otherwise you're not winning the playoff scenario. You know what I mean? So in my mind, if you're going to shorten the season and do this type of structure, in my mind, the only ones that should have had the opportunity to win Alexis Lafreniere was, the bottom 7. Because again, those other teams have a chance, those lower bound teams that weren't going to make the playoffs have a much greater chance of making the playoffs than they did, back in March and mid-March. So James, I know that you're kind of new to hockey and this is all kind of new, but I want to know your perspective from the outside. Does this seem kind of bush league to you? Does it seem like something that you think is absolutely ridiculous, or is it actually kind of interesting? Or what is your take from, being such a fan with other sports and knowing how, draft lotteries and other kind of lotteries work or drafts work in other sports?
I think it's tough. I don't like it at all. I mean, the first pick should go to the teams that suck because it helps them turn around their franchise. Like, I'd be pretty pissed, no offense to you, but if this dude went to the Oilers, I'd be pissed because that top line would be ridiculous. And they're just giving the rich more stuff.
Right.
It's like, really, he should really go to the Red Wings, man. This guy's supposed to be this great talent, this guy who like transforms your franchise, and the Red Wings have nobody. They had 17 wins. Like, they need some help, and the NHL isn't giving them that help.
Right.
That sucks. That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a lot of people's concern with all this, but I tend to side towards an actual draft lottery in a normal scenario. I think that does, as Tyler mentioned, it does prevent tanking. Do I think that the Detroit Red Wings tanked this year? I don't. I just think they were very sorry. I don't think they were very good at all. I think that you guys can agree it's very hard for a team and a coach to willingly tank. It comes from above. It comes from the GM side. It comes from
any sport too. Yeah, I mean, maybe not baseball because Tyler said baseball, but for the NFL, the Dolphins, like they should have lost every single game to get that first overall pick, but towards the end they won 4 in a row.
Right, and like, I think that just begs the question. It doesn't come from the players. It doesn't come from the coach because someone's going to call that out. It comes from the GM and maybe who they trade for, who they put in place. And Eric, what is your to kind of round this out? What is your kind of feeling on all of this?
So the first pick didn't go to the Atlanta Thrashers. I thought that meme said it did. No, but I remember seeing like a clip of them announcing it, and so they had like the numbers 3 through 7, the picks lined up, so they have 1 and 2 left. So they're pulling out the last pick. All right, here's going to be the first pick, and he's like, and the first pick is, and he flips it over, it's just the NHL logo. You're like, what the fuck is this? He's like, to be determined. Like, this is going to be a team that, like you said, 1 in 8 chance that is in the playoffs. It's going to be one of these teams. But from what I remember, wasn't there, like with Ottawa Senators, they traded Erik Karlsson to the Sharks last year. They've made some trades in the past few years. They were, if you come to think about it, maybe what was that, 2 years ago? They were in a Game 7 versus the Pittsburgh Penguins, lost, I believe, in overtime.
Yeah.
On a fucking bar down clinger. I forget who scored it, but if they would have won that, things would have been a lot different. But anyways, they lost that game. They were a game away from the Cup Finals. That year, the Penguins went on winning, I think, their second Cup in a row. But I think after that, they made a bunch of trades, and one of them was Karlsson to the Sharks. The Avalanche made some trades, I think, with the Red Wings. Going back, I'm not a big fact check guy. Alex, I know this gets you rattled, but I know that there was a bunch of trades with the Red Wings, the Avalanche, the Sharks, and the Senators, and that created all these unconditional picks from what I remember. And I think that's all played into this draft, which I don't think anyone ever would have thought that was going to happen. But, I mean, do you think this, what I'm thinking is, do you think this will ever happen again? Like, do you think, did it happen because of all these unconditional picks that all of a sudden created a to be determined team because of all these different trades that happened in the past? Or is this like, is what I'm saying, is this a fluke and it's never going to happen again? Or do you think this will happen again?
Well, this won't happen again. I mean, unless they don't have unless they have another shortened season next year, this isn't going to happen again. Because of the way it was set up, it was only set up for this unprecedented event. So I really don't see that occurring. But and all the other trades have to do with the first round pick. I think that's just normal business. And you're going to see that from years to come. But that didn't put a playoff team into contention for a first overall pick. I will round out with this. I will say, as an Oilers fan, and I will. You guys may not believe me what I'm about to say. I hope to God that if we lose, that we don't end up in that first overall pick. And here's the reason why: is because we went from third to first back in 2015 to get who is now considered the greatest player to walk the earth at this moment, and to get another player of that caliber who, to complement, Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid would just become, we're already the most hated team in the league because of that, especially from the Buffalo fans. And that it would just continue down that spiral. And I just don't want to have to, I don't want to have to explain any of that. We don't.
I thought you were talking about Lucic. You weren't talking about Lucic.
No. But yeah, I mean, to me, this is a debacle, and I think we all can kind of agree. But I will say that it did give me a reason to come on the podcast and kind of give a rant, and so I guess I can thank it for that.
Was that pick by the Avalanche one of those unconditionals? Didn't they receive Mikko Rantanen out of one of those?
Yes.
Does that sound right?
That was that year.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's another dude that I don't know when he was drafted, but I know
he was drafted in the 2015. He was the Connor McDavid draft.
He's a franchise changer, that guy. I mean, mm-hmm. He can definitely contribute, and he's contributing to the Avalanche. So he was one of those unconditional picks from that played into all this shit. But just going what you're saying, I don't know if this is ever going to happen again, probably just because of all the circumstances. But yeah. I just wanted to point that out.
Thanks, Tradon, everyone, for giving their input on the NHL. We're talking about baseball and the 2020 season and what new rule changes and what this season is going to look like. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to TLDR podcast. In this segment, we're talking about Major League Baseball and their return this season for 2020. To give you guys a few stats that's coming up once I pull it up because I just fucking didn't do it. All right, here we go.
Fucking guy.
We do the facts.
All right, we have a 60-game season, which will start on July 23rd and 24th. Spring training part 2, that starts July 1st. At the time of this recording, that's tomorrow, boys. So here is the new policies in place for the COVID-19 and all what's going on with that. All players are tested upon arrival to camp once they test negative. Players and coaches and support staff will be tested every other day for training camp, regular season, and postseason. Anyone who tests positive will be quarantined. In order to return, they must get 2 negative tests. Players will receive symptom and temperature checks at least twice a day. Blood antibody tests will be conducted once a month. Players and team personnel not participating in the game will sit in the stands 6 feet apart or in a designated area. All non-playing personnel are required to wear masks in the dugout and in the bullpen. There is no spitting or chewing tobacco allowed. However, gum is allowed. So make sure you get that big league chew up in the dugout. No celebratory contact, meaning high fives, fist bumps, hugs, etc., is allowed.
No fun.
No fun at all. As far as the schedule looks, so there's 60 games in the regular season. 40 of those games will be played against interdivision teams. So 10 games against each team in your division. And then the remaining 20 games will be played against the opposite league in a geographical area. So, for example, the NL West will be playing the American League West. Spring training will be held at the team's home ballpark. This is partially due, of course, to the recent COVID outbreaks in Arizona and Florida. So for the new game rules that are in play this year that are new for the season, there's going to be a designated hitter in both leagues, which is a really, really big deal, probably the biggest change. As many of you guys know, DH has only been in the American League for a while, and the National League pitchers could hit. That's gone. DH both leagues. Teams will begin a season with a 30-man roster, reduced to 28 after 2 weeks, and again to 26 after 4 weeks. The trade deadline is August 31st. A player on the MLB roster must be on the MLB roster by September 15th to be eligible for the postseason. The teams are allowed to have a 3-player taxi squad, meaning that it's a player that's not on the roster that could be added last minute in case of any, COVID, anything, or any kind of last minute injuries. 3 players allowed, but one of them must be a catcher. During extra innings, each half inning will begin with a runner on second base, who will be the batter who made the last out in the previous inning, which is another big change. And there will be a separate injured list for COVID-19 related incidents, and there's no time limit for that injured list. There's no like a 10-day, there's no 45-day, there's no 60-day, no time limit for any COVID related incidents. The postseason remains at 10 teams. The schedule for that is TBD. As far as the schedule goes, the regular season will end around September 27th. So we'll have a October postseason as it normally would be. Again, it remains at 10 teams. So as far as the numbers go, it's going to be the same as it would be usually. So my question to you guys is, with all these new rules, with the 60-game season, obviously normally we have a 162, so we're playing just a little bit over a third of what a regular season would be. What teams do you guys think will thrive and struggle in the shortened season?
Angels always play well the first half of the season, so they only got half a season. Right. I think they could hopefully do well.
I mean, they also have one of the oldest lineups in baseball right now, so a shorter season means like your players will last longer.
More dingers.
Terrible staff right now. So the shorter the season, less innings at the pitch. I hope they'll be better with that. That's what I'm hoping for. Go Angels. World Series.
I definitely think, as far as the Angels situation goes, having Shohei Ohtani, he was going to be on an innings limit this season, and with 60 games,
not anymore.
Full go. So we're probably going to see a full go Ohtani, which I think is very exciting, and I think that gives the Angels a huge benefit. They still have one of the oldest lineups in baseball, but again, with a shortened lineup, that might benefit them because they won't deal with injuries over a prolonged season. So I think the Angels, for me personally, are a very interesting team to watch in a shortened season. It could benefit them. I think that's one of the teams that, on a full season might be on the outside looking in, but in this situation might be one of those fringe wildcard teams for me. Alex, what do you think?
I think there's a lot of crazy things that could happen, especially with teams like the Padres or the Phillies or the White Sox or the Blue Jays, who have all these young arms that they maybe would have not promoted to start this normal 162 because they want them on inning limits. Guys like Mackenzie Gore with the Padres or Nate Pearson with the Blue Jays. So I think for these teams that have young arms that, they're going to get maybe 10 starts-ish, 10 to 12 starts, depending on it. You don't need an inning limits. You throw your best guys. I think deep teams like the Rays and the Dodgers, who just have like really too many players to fill out their 26-man roster to begin with, that can only be beneficial. I think to go on like the rule changes real quick, the universal DH was coming anyway. It was only a matter of time. This MLB CBA is up after the 2021 season. I think there was a good chance that was going to change already. I personally, and I think they're doing, to kind of move to the other one, they're doing the second, guy on second base to start the extras just to save pitchers. These guys have been sitting at home for 3 months now. They can be throwing in their backyard. Maybe they live near somebody that they can toss with, but there's no way they can simulate what a real spring training is in 3 weeks, especially for the pitchers. So I think teams that have nasty bullpens, like Tampa Bay, legitimately could end this season with the best record because their bullpen's nasty. They've already implemented the opener so many times. They just need to pound through 60 games. They get to play the Orioles a bunch. And some of these other teams, like even the Yankees, they're supposed to be so good, but they already have injury questions throughout their rotation. I think I'm on big Tampa Bay Rays hype train right now. I think they could end up being very good. I think some of these other central teams that get to play kind of weaker opponents, like the Twins and the Indians, could have very good seasons as well because they can just beat up on the Royals and the Tigers, who are supposed to be terrible. It will be interesting to see. I'm still not even 100% sure it's going to happen. I'm not 100% sure any of these are going to happen, but I'm excited. We'll see. Players are already opting out. Ryan Zimmerman's already opted out. Joe Ross has already opted out. Ian Desmond has opted out. And I don't blame any of those guys at all. They all have family members with different circumstances, young kids. Some of them are leaving like multiple millions of dollars on the table, but you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, obviously the big wild card in all of this is COVID and how that's going to happen. And really the team that stays the healthiest in terms of COVID is going to be the team that's going to benefit the most. And really, realistically, that could be anybody. That could be the freaking Marlins that nobody gets tested positive and they run away with that division. And everyone else, gets tested. And you're looking at, say you get, 3 of your main starters go down with COVID and they're out for at least a week. That's a big chunk of a 60-game season. That's a big deal. And for baseball, the biggest difference is this is going to be a sprint versus a marathon. And people always talk about how baseball's a marathon. And so it's going to be interesting to see what teams can handle the sprint. And it's very non-baseball like, and it's going to be very, very different. I'm very intrigued to see what's going to happen. For example, last year, the Washington Nationals in the first 2 months of the season were not the best team. They struggled. They had a losing record. They did not look like a playoff team. And they turned it around after those first 60 games and won the World Series. So you could see a lot of teams like that will probably miss out, that potentially in a full season might have made the playoffs, might have won a World Series. So I think for me, that's the biggest thing. What do you guys think that whoever wins this season, whoever wins the World Series, is a legit champion? Is there going to be an asterisk next to their World Series title because it was only 60 games? What do you guys think on that?
I'll start. I can't say that you could give him an asterisk for that because I think you got a point that it's a sprint now, and I'll be the first to admit that I'm not. During the regular season of baseball, it drags out. It gets a little drawn out for my taste. World Series baseball, and I'm not even a huge baseball guy, is some of the best sports you'll ever watch. It is electric. It is fun. And I think that most of the season is going to be like that in the regular season for the first time. And I've never seen it like that. So, and I think to your point, these teams are going to be having to deal with this different type of structure with they're going to have to play differently every other day or every day, and how do you not recognize that as the team that can actually do that and figure out a way to win the sprint and do it consistently night over night how do you not give them the full, here's your World Series trophy? I mean, you figured out this, these unprecedented times, you figured out this new structure. I think that's you got to commend them for that.
Yeah, I think I agree with Tradon. I wouldn't put an asterisk on it. Everybody's going to, but at the same time, it's a different format. It's adapting to the change of what's going on right now. So it's almost like winning the wait. It's like they waited this whole time for the season to begin. And yes, players are opting out. And yes, like you said, say someone's positive, they're out for a week. That's a big chunk of a 60-game season. But at this time, the teams that adapt to that change, even what Alex is saying, it could be the Tampa Bay Rays. They could just be locked and loaded and waiting for this, be ready for it. The teams that adapt to that change and that are ready to go are the ones that, it sounds simple, but the ones that are probably going to get all the way to that deep end of the season. And people are going to put an asterisk on it, but, they put in the effort and they did everything they could to get there. So with what they have right now, so you got to give them credit for that. And I don't think you should put an asterisk on it. I would say the same thing for the NBA and the NHL. Like, they went through almost the full season and they were close to the end. And now they have this weight and they're put on hold. The teams that adapt to the change and that find a way to get it done, let alone the certain areas that have the virus and things like that. But the teams that can adapt to it and do the right things and get there, you can't take away the credit for that. You can't put an asterisk on that.
Yeah, I got one thing. So I agree. I don't think you can put an asterisk on it because everyone's starting at an equal level. Everyone's playing 60 games. It's the beginning of the season. Tradon, my question for you, since you're like the big hockey guy, for instance, say your Oilers lose in the first round or like the Penguins lose and those 12 or 11 seeds turn into the 2012 Kings and surprise the world and, sweep all their way through. If one of those teams that wasn't going to make the playoffs, like, can you put an asterisk on them? Where I think you almost could, compared to MLB, say the Marlins get hot all of a sudden and they squeak in and then they win it all because everyone started at an equal level. I don't think you can. For those NHL teams, you might have to.
I don't know if we're on the same wavelength, but I was literally thinking the same thing when Eric was talking there. I don't want to be that fan, especially because I'm playing a team that is playing I should be in the playoffs, for Christ's sake. Okay. I'm just going to say I should be in the playoffs. Okay. The fact that I'm not right now and have to play my way in, and if I lose 3 games, I'm done. That wouldn't have been the case, back in March. I could have lost 3 games and still been in the playoffs. No big deal. Can you put an asterisk on that? I don't know. I think you got to give the benefit of the fact that, the league stopped. Everyone's coming back and no one's been training. So it's really going to be a battle. I mean, and everyone, no one's had the training. No one's been together. The chemistry that, or the chemistry and the momentum that maybe the Oilers were having towards the end, which we were having a lot of momentum towards the end, is completely washed. Can you put an asterisk? I don't think you can put an asterisk on that just because of the circumstance. Maybe in my mind it'll always be there, but to be a fair fan, they were still mathematically able. They could have made the playoffs if we would have lost all of our games and Chicago would have won all of their games. So
you want to bet? You want to bet that McDavid messes up his first pass, $200,000? I don't think he'll be ready.
Well, I'm not going to bet that because I'll be honest, McDavid makes some
he'll probably
silly
be
passing mistakes. So I'm not going to make that bet.
Oh shit!
No, I'll be honest. He's
from the
my
heart.
boy, but he makes some questionable moves sometimes.
Yeah, I mean,
I want to play the other side for you guys here. Sorry, Tyler, but I'm going to go. I think there should be an asterisk, mainly because baseball is not a sprint. They have never, ever, I'm just looking at the stats here for the history, but they've never played under 70 games ever. And now you're playing 60. So now you're going to compare those championships, the World Series championships, to all the other championships before that? I don't think that's fair to everybody else. They have all played this marathon, 162 games plus some, and now you're just playing 60 games, then some. I don't think that's fair. That's not baseball. I mean, it is baseball. But it's not
That's
historically
fair.
baseball.
That's fair, but then it goes back to what we talked about last week, where different eras. We're still comparing different eras. Why are there no asterisks on every single era in baseball?
Astros.
Because
I thought they're called the
isn't
Houston
a
Asterix. The Houston
they are.
Asterix.
They definitely are. Because before, like, you see how things changed before. It was this gradual, either increase or decrease of some sort. This is major. This is cutting off 102 games. That's major compared to what it was last year. The biggest change I see here is that they went from 60 games to 84 games. That was the biggest change in the scheduling for games. But now you're doing 102 games. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's definitely a big difference. And James, I agree with you. It's definitely not a full legit season that we're used to seeing. And I think no matter what, like whoever wins the World Series this year, I think people are going to say like, oh, it wasn't a real season. You didn't have the full 162. I mean, not even close to that. Not even half of that. But the way I see it, if the Houston Astros can fucking steal signs and do all that shit, and they're not an asterisk or anything for them to get rid of their 2017 World Series championship, you know, a fucking team that plays 60 games hard, plays it well, gets in the playoffs, is one of the final 10 teams to play it, and we play a normal playoffs the way it's normally played. For me, I don't think there's an asterisk, but of course, you know, yeah, James, I agree with you that it's definitely not a full season. There's a lot that plays out during that regular season with injuries, with trades, with just the ebbs and flows of records and how, you know, teams go through cold streaks and hot streaks. And, you know, it's going to be a sprint for 60 games versus a marathon. But yeah, I mean, for me,
Adapting.
it's definitely interesting. I think, like, you know, a lot of sports are going through the same thing. This is just the 2020 world that we live in right now.
Like the NBA and NHL had lockouts too. The Blackhawks won a cup in one of those lockout seasons, so we might as well put an asterisk on them too. You know, I mean, the NBA had a lockout. I think the Heat won that year, so let's throw an asterisk on them. And whoever wins baseball, if it's not the Angels this year, we're throwing an asterisk on them too. That's my conclusion.
I love it. All right, this will end this segment on Major League Baseball. When we come back, James is going to wrap us up with the NFL offseason moves on the defensive side. Come back. All right, guys, welcome back to TLDR Podcast. Wrapping up our final segment. James is going to tell us all of his biggest NFL offseason moves on the defensive side of the ball. James, take it away.
All right, guys, last segment of the night, hole number 18 out of 18. Let's finish strong. So I'm going to start with the D lineman here. We're going to start with Calais Campbell being traded to the Ravens. He's 33 years old. He was traded from the Jaguars to the Ravens for a 2020 fifth-round pick. He then signed a 2-year, $25 million contract. He's a 5-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All-Pro, NFL Defensive Player of the Year in 2017, Walter Payton Man of the Year in 2019. He was named Pro Football Focus's 2019 Run Defender of the Year in 2019, like I just said. The Ravens were 14-2 with a really good defense, but they lost in the divisional round to Derrick Henry and the Titans. How much better does Calais Campbell make this team? Will they be able to compete with the Chiefs, the Titans? Can they stop Patrick Mahomes? Can they stop Derrick Henry? What do you guys think?
I'm not sure if anyone can stop Derrick Henry like he was that last 5 weeks plus of the season. I mean, he was nasty. I kind of think the AFC is, I mean, you know, we kind of wish the Cam Newton news had come last week, so we could have talked about it during the offensive side of the ball. But, I mean, between the Ravens and the Chiefs, those two kind of feel like the two heavyweights of the AFC. I don't know if, you know, he's now 33. Football is a lot different than the other, you know, 3 major sports. It feels like it doesn't matter what position you play unless it's quarterback. Right when you get over 30, your body starts to kind of wear down. You know, but he obviously had a great season in 2019. He was Defensive Player of the Year only 2 years ago, 2017. Well, I guess 3 years ago now.
Yeah.
It's tough. If anything, just his presence in there should help that Ravens defense become better. And for him, it's got to feel great to get out of Jacksonville. It's got to feel good to get out of there.
Yeah, just trash team. To back up what you were saying, the last 3 years, he's always been a top 4 defensive lineman. 2017, right, number 1, he had 14.5 sacks. 2018, he's number 1 overall defensive lineman with 10.5. And last year he was number 3 overall with 6.5 sacks. This guy is an absolute monster. The Ravens as a whole was ranked number 5 in rush defense. They only allowed 4.4 yards per carry and had 37 sacks as a team. Overall, I think they take over. Like the Chiefs as a whole, they have a passing attack, but that's predicated on the run. Without a run, you cover those passes. And Calais Campbell can stop the run single-handedly. As soon as he was signed, he was immediately the best player on the defensive side of that ball.
That answers my question. I was going to say, because you said, is he going to stop Mahomes? Is he going to stop Derrick Henry? I was going to say, well, is he better at stopping a running back or a quarterback? I mean, that's probably a dumb question, but
he's a D lineman, dude. What is he gonna? He's gonna intercept the ball, like go play 10 yards deep. What is he gonna do?
Is he gonna sack the quarterback, or is he gonna fall for the fake and Derrick Henry run right by him like they did to the Ravens last year when they had, what you said, 4 rush yards in the season, and then Derrick Henry had 400 rush yards in the game? I mean, is he more important? Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm just saying. But you kind of answered the question. He had this number of sacks, but he was better at stopping the run. So therefore, probably be better off against Derrick Henry, Titans, in my opinion.
We're going to move on to Malcolm Jenkins going to the Saints. He's a safety. He's 32 years old. He just signed a 4-year, $32 million contract. He's a 2-time Super Bowl champ, 3-time Pro Bowler, 1-time All-Pro. He's coming back to the team that drafted him. In 2009, he was drafted number 14 overall out of Ohio State by the Saints. He recently played the last couple of years with the Eagles. So at 32 years old, is Malcolm Jenkins what the Saints need? They finished 13-3 last season, but they lost in the divisional round to the Vikings in overtime, 26-20. Tyler, what's your take on this? I know you're a big Eagles guy, and this guy was your safety for a long time.
Yeah, Malcolm Jenkins, great player for us last few seasons. I think one of the biggest problems the Eagles was always the secondary. But Jenkins was always a pretty solid guy for us. As far as him going to the Saints, I think it's a plus. Even though he's a little bit older, I think the Saints can afford some veteran leadership on the defensive end. I don't think that's gonna hurt them at all. Personally, James, like, what are the Saints on the defensive side of the ball like? How are they looking? Like, is this gonna help them out? Or are they younger? Is the Jenkins going to make it better? I mean, 32, you think that's kind of right on the fringe of like kind of starting.
He's also a safety.
Also a safety. You're right. That's a position that can last a long. For me personally, from looking at it, I think it's a big pickup for the Saints.
The Saints defense is nasty. They might be one of the best defenses of the year next year. I mean, Marcus Williams last year, who was a free safety, he's coming off of 47 tackle, 4 interception, and 13 pass defensive years. He's only allowed 11 receptions last year. He was the number 4 overall free safety. They still have Cameron Jordan on that defensive line. That dude had 16 sacks last year. 16 sacks. Just one dude just coming off the defensive line. The Saints defense is going to be something I'm afraid of, especially as a Niners fan. Like, I don't want to play him, man. They're gonna mess my team up. So that's something I'd be afraid of.
All they need to do is stick a hand in Jimmy G's face, and that's a pick right there.
Yeah, how about let's talk about Jared Goff?
Jared G or Jimmy G, they're the same dude, basically.
Okay. Keep talking, Eric. Let's see if you make the playoffs this year.
$100.
I'm betting. I'm down.
We shook on it.
Okay. You have any thoughts, Alex?
Oh, keep going.
Okay. Next, we're going to go to cornerback, Darius Slay to the Eagles. So, Tyler, I'm going to talk to you again. Darius Slay is 29 years old. He was traded from Detroit for a 2020 third and 5th round draft pick. He signed a 3-year, $50 million deal. He's a 3-time Pro Bowler, 1-time All-Pro, and was the NFL interception leader in 2017. Fun fact about him is that he's changing his number from 23 to 24 in order to honor Kobe Bryant. So the Eagles just lost Malcolm Jenkins. So does Darius Slay pick up the slack and then some to return to the lockdown corner he once was? Last year was an awful year for Darius Slay. He posted his worst ratings. He's also playing for a terrible Lions team. In 2019, the Eagles finished 9-7, barely squeaking into a wild card spot, but then lost to the Seahawks 9-17. Tyler, with the loss of Malcolm Jenkins, are you happy with this pickup?
Yeah, obviously a huge lot of Jenkins, but I feel like if that was a big pickup with Clay, hopefully he plans out obviously a low year last year at the Lions, but I think coming over to, I think just an overall better established team and coaching staff of the Eagles will help him out a little bit. Like I mentioned earlier, the Eagles have had issues with their secondary cornerback safeties in the past, signing free agents, aka Nnamdi Asomugha. I'm looking at you, bro. Huge ago. My immediate reaction was like, I don't want another one of that to happen. So I'm a little skeptical just because of the recent history with the Eagles secondary. Like, it's just kind of a weird, sensitive spot for Eagles fans. But I hope Clay comes in, shuts it down, gives us a huge needed stop on the defense side of the ball. So hopefully it pans out. But like I said, I am a little skeptical just because of the Eagles' history. Nothing else, nothing against Clay, just with the past.
His last name is Slay, dude.
Clay.
He keeps saying Clay.
You were calling Zion Williamson Zion Williams earlier too.
It's Darius Slay, dude.
Slay it. Fly, Eagles, fly. I'm out.
All right. So the Eagles' rush defense as a whole was ranked number 3, which is fantastic. As Tyler was saying, their pass defense is horrible. They're ranked number 19. They allowed 3,865 yards and allowed the QBs to have a 60.9 completion percentage. They also only had 11 interceptions, and the one year that Darius Slay led the league, he had 8. So it's kind of crazy. If you can replicate that, he'll be huge for the Eagles. Moving on to Corey Littleton to the Raiders. This is your guy, Eric. Corey Littleton, 26 years old. He just signed for a 3-year, $36 million contract. He was a one-time All-Pro and one-time Pro Bowler. He's coming from the Rams. And the Raiders are basically rebuilding their team as they move to Vegas. So does Corey Littleton become the de facto leader of that defense and put up the same stat-stuffing numbers he did in the last 2 seasons with the Rams? Does he help the team get to 500? The Raiders were 7-9 last season and missed the playoffs. The season I'm referencing was in 2019, where he had 134 tackles, 78 were solo, and he also had 2 interceptions and 9 pass defense. What do you guys think?
I thought this was, as a Rams fan, we had to let a bunch of guys go. Some guys retired. I thought losing Corey Littleton is going to be a huge blow for them. And he's still young. He's only 26, 27. For a Raiders team that's up and coming, I don't see why he can't be the leader of that defense. He was already calling all the defensive plays for the Rams. He's all over the place. He would play special teams. He had some punt blocks. Corey Little, it feels like every time I watch a game, you know how there's just those players, it seems like they're just mentioning their names every time. That's who Corey Littleton is. He seems like he does everything. He flies around the field. Dude's a monster. I personally think great pickup for the Raiders.
That's a cheap pickup too. 3-year, $36 million for that linebacker.
Yeah, that's not that much.
Very cheap.
Yeah, that's a solid pickup.
I think that Raiders fans should be pretty happy about this. I mean, they're going to get a nice new stadium. They're getting a new place to play, and with that, they're getting a new renewed, defense. He's going to be. They can build around him. It seems like they haven't had, this type of linebacker in a while. So that alone is going to boost their ability to, squeak into the playoffs or even, turn some heads while doing it. And if I think I said this last week, once you get a player that can kind of fix one of the issues or a big issue, on whatever side of the ball, you then can start to build around that player and things start to go in the right direction from there.
So they haven't had a linebacker like this guy in a long time, and that's correct. Because last year they had Vontaze Burfict. You guys remember who that is? He's the guy who made AB go crazy. He's the guy who was suspended multiple times for dirty hits. He had that gnarly hit on AB and literally gave him CTE on the spot right then and there. Since then, AB has never been the same. And he's not ever going to play again, probably.
Yeah.
That's Vontaze Burfict for you.
So do you think
last one.
if they get Littleton, maybe he forces a fumble here and there, gets a pick here and there, is that really going to help the Raiders? Is Derek Carr not going to throw a pick or two every game? Is that going to even out the offensive struggles for the Raiders? That's what I'm wondering. Like Tradon said, they got the new stadium, they got the new fan base in Vegas. They still have the crazy old fan base from their old Oaktown. But is that going to even out the offensive struggles?
I mean,
do you think they make the playoffs? Is what I'm asking. Do they make the playoffs?
Oh no, absolutely not.
I mean, they probably. I mean, yeah. I mean, I guess you can say they probably will make the playoffs if you're not. Obviously, he's not going to fix the offensive struggles that they're having, but if he at least can fix the defensive struggles,
does he even them out?
And at some point, is he going to even them out this year? Maybe not, but at least it gives them something to actually build off of, and maybe they will find a wild card spot. Who knows? Maybe Derek Carr can pull the head out of his ass and actually do something. Maybe this will be a spark plug. If the defense is actually doing some work, maybe this is a catalyst for the offense.
If you don't see me next week, I may have been murdered by a Raiders fan for saying that, but yeah.
R.I.P. Eric.
I want to throw some debates in there.
The last person we're talking about is a rookie, and it's Chase Young. Chase Young is 21 years old. He was drafted number 2 overall in the 2020 NFL Draft. He's from Ohio State. He broke the single-season sack record with 16.5 in his final year. Over 3 seasons, he played 34 games, had 98 tackles, 68 solo, 40.5 tackles for loss, 30.5 sacks, and 9 forced fumbles. Pro Football Focus ranked him the number 1 defensive end in the entire country. So out of 534 defensive ends, he was ranked number 1. Scouts everywhere, everybody who scouted him, said Young is the best edge prospect we've ever scouted. So the Redskins have a very, very young and improving team that finished 3-13 last season. Does Chase Young have a Nick Bosa year? Nick Bosa was the number 2 pick of last year's draft. He's a Pro Bowler, NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year, all-rookie team, and he had 9 sacks. Does Chase Young have that same impact? Because right now, on paper, this guy sounds like a monster. Like he seems like he could just wreck offensive single-handedly.
He could have a Nick Bosa-like year, not saying the Redskins are going to make the playoffs. They're probably not going to have a much better record than they did last year. But he could easily be a Pro Bowler and the NFL Rookie Defensive Player of the Year. He's a monster. The dude's nuts. I'm predicting double-digit sacks.
Oh, me too. 100%. I agree. I'm going to say 13.
That's going to wrap up this episode of TLDR. Thanks to James, Tradon, Eric, and Alex for joining us. And we'll see you guys next time. Adios.